Hi, I'm Michael Morrissey. I cover startups and innovation for Boston.com and the Boston Globe. I run a section called The Hive, which is a new vertical that launched 4 months ago, coincidentally when I started at the Globe. That covers sort of all the great ideas that came out tonight, covers sort of the funding atmosphere, covers sort of people using Indiegogo and Kickstarter. A lot of Indiegogo campaigns tonight. And I'd love to hear about your sort of startup ideas, and hopefully you can give me an idea of sort of what sort of thing that you would like to see the Boston Globe cover in terms of doing a better job covering the startup community.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, everybody. I'm Barb Feiner. I am CEO of Tech Sandbox, one of the companies that crowdfunded at back in October. I think we crowdfunded here. And we raised $9,000, a little over $9,000. I'll tell you about my journey as Mike asks us questions. But we are an innovation center out in Metro West.
Hello, I'm Christus Benjamin. I'm from Bow & Drape. Aubrey couldn't make it tonight, but I'm the brand manager, and Bow & Drape is an e-commerce company that allows women to design their own clothing.
Hi, I'm Halley, and I'm at Halley on Twitter. If you want to connect with me, feel free. I'm a writer, and I did a Kickstarter program to raise money to write a book about a fictional accelerator program, somewhat like Techstars, where I was 6 months before now. So it's been fully funded, and I'm writing the thing. So you'll hear more about it. It's called Founders Less Than 3.
So I think to kind of start off tonight, I think it would be good to sort of explain sort of 3 sort of basic questions. What were you raising for when you started crowdfunding? How much were you trying to raise? And then, and where were you trying to raise it? Whether that's Kickstarter on your own site. So what, how much, and where?
So what we're trying to do is build a community of entrepreneurs in the science and technology space out in Metro West. So when I say Metro West, that's, Marlborough, Westboro, Hopkinton. Has anybody heard of those towns? Right. There are towns outside of Boston and Cambridge, just thought I'd let you know that. So there isn't any cohesive community out there. And if you think about the fact that there's no cohesive community and about 1 million people, you can understand that probably the first thing I need to do is figure out how to get a whole bunch of those people together. It's not like here where you go to something like this and there's a couple hundred people that show up. So I decided that the thing that I wanted to crowdfund for was what I was calling a catalyzing party that I would market to all of the stakeholders, from venture capitalists to entrepreneurs to service providers, to get them to come together and meet each other, to also prove to each other that they live in Metro West and that there really are things other than cows next door to them. So that was what I was crowdfunding for. The platform was, I chose Rocket Hub. There are a number of reasons for that. And by the way, the CTO and founder of Rocket Hub is a Harvard alum, and I had met him at an event from Entretech, which is one of the Northeastern University organizations that does stuff around tech entrepreneurship. And I like what he had to say, and they actually fit in my model better. I can explain that later. We actually, so Rocket Hub, I decided to shoot the moon with how much I asked for. We were crowdfunding for $36,000 on purpose. I'll tell you about some of the dynamics of why you might want to set a high goal, a low goal. It's different on every platform, by the way. So that was great. My actual wish was for $16,000, and we raised a little over $9,000, and then we actually had some Luddites who sent me some checks. So I don't know how to quite count the Luddites, but there you go.
We, Bow & Drape, decided to raise money to fund our production facilities in the garment districts in New York, and we decided to raise $30,000 to also solidify our sample houses so we could go to market on all our dresses and skirts. We chose Kickstarter.
Okay, give me the questions again. It's very complicated, I know.
What were you raising?
What was I raising? I was raising money to basically get an advance for a book. It essentially became my advance for writing a book instead of using a traditional publisher.
How much were you trying to raise?
I was trying to raise, it's right here, about $15,000 and I did $15,929.
And where did you raise it?
How and who I connected with? It was via Kickstarter, and the reason I picked Kickstarter was that I had heard the most about it, and I learned the most about how to use it. And all the other platforms I know are great. It wasn't anything except that I continued to go to presentations like this where people were talking the inside out of why Kickstarter would be a great place to work, so that's what I did. Of course, Kickstarter is, if you don't raise the target, you get zero. By the way, Kickstarter is owned by Amazon, so Amazon becomes your banker.
Now, I guess one thing I'm also kind of curious is why go with crowdfunding? I mean, one thing I kind of talk with a lot of people out there, and when they don't know anything about crowdfunding and never tried it before, it just seems like free money to them. Is that what you sort of hoped it would be, just sort of free money from all these people without having to pitch scary investors, or was there a different motivation going after getting a lot of different smaller funders?
I only wish that there were millions of dollars that fell from heaven. No, actually, one of the reasons that you should think about doing crowdfunding is to what I call socialize your idea. It's a really good, I use the word excuse, to let your network know that you're doing something really cool, because you get to tell them what you're doing and ask them to take an action. So I could have sent out an email to my, I don't know, a couple thousand people on my LinkedIn, Facebook, blah, blah, blah. I could have sent out an email saying, hi, I'm doing this thing called Tech Sandbox and wanted to let you know, but I decided that it would be more fun to do this with one of the popular tools right now, and then, by the way, I get to ask for a little bit of money, so that's not such a bad thing, right? And one of the messages it took me a while, by the way, I made some mistakes, but one of the messages I finally came up with was, you've known me through even business or through things I've done for you. Would you buy me a pizza? Because for $20 you can crowdfund me. So, but it was a great excuse. I sent about 6 rounds of emails to people. It's a lot of work, by the way, but it got the concept and the brand name out to a lot of people, even those who didn't crowdfund.
I think what was successful for us was the gifting for Kickstarter. If we had several tiers of gifts, so when someone donated $20, they could design their own scarf, and when you gave us $100, you could design a dress. So it was that idea that we were getting our product out there, we were like gaining brand advocates right away. That was very successful.
I would add that exactly what the other women have talked about, that it is to me, a branding platform. And it means, especially for books, I've been in a startup at Techstars that was all about how to help people promote their books. And it seemed to me, everything I learned was you need to start promoting the book way sooner than you know. Maybe as soon as you get the idea and it hasn't even been written. And it looked as if Kickstarter would allow me to do that, and I think it did. So crowdfunding was my choice because I wanted readers after the project was done. I needed as broad a base of people. I've been a CEO of a startup. It was funded by Highland Capital. That was one source of money. That was a big piece of money compared. But I need readers for my project. I needed advocates, and that's what crowdfunding will let you do, I think.
Barb, this is for you. So when you're doing a catalyst party and trying to sort of create a new movement, you're funding something very specific, but also hoping it'll have a lot of ripple effects. When you were kind of going out there and sort of coming up with this idea, sort of planning this event, and sort of planning what you wanted to happen afterwards, how clearly did you have to define that, you think, to successfully raise money? And what do you think, instead of sort of, when somebody's donating to this, they think, oh, this is going to fizzle, this is going to work. How did you instill that confidence that this would be an investment that would make an impact?
So, good question. I think that people crowdfund people for just a couple of reasons. One has to do with your personal connection. They believe in you, or they want to do something nice for you. And, the business idea itself, I suppose, unless you were, like, murdering puppies or something. That's not part of your game, though, I know that. Unless there was something they really disagreed with, a lot of the people, you're reaching out to your networks, right? So who's in your network? Professional associates, family, friends, casual acquaintances that you might have met at an event like this. So you're reaching out and asking them to do this, and most of the time I think it's because of you. They're trying to do something nice for you. The second category is they really, really, really believe in what you're doing. So on Rocket Hub, while I was doing mine, there was a company raising money for a new running shoe that apparently he must have had some early adopters. He raised like $300,000. And I kind of kept on hoping that they'd do the accounting wrong for the folks in the back end, and I did some of that, but that didn't work. So, there are followers for products or services where there's something that you really, 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 really want. I actually crowdfunded you guys. You may not remember, but I did. I love what they're doing, so I said, hey, what the heck, I've done a few crowdfunding things before. So I think that's why people do it. And then there were certainly some people who found out about me, who did not know about me, weren't on lists, that did love the idea and it resonated with them. So I had some people that I didn't know and was like, oh, cool, I don't know Joe Smith. Where did he come from? And he crowdfunded me. So there will be some of that, but really mostly rely on people doing it because of you.
Now, as you were raising money, did the idea evolve? Did you have a very specific idea and stick with it throughout that, or after during this process and after you raised money, did the strategy shift?
For me, the strategy is, like 85, 90% of what it was supposed to be. My whole business was really opening a physical innovation center, like a CIC or an MS Nerd. I should be so lucky, but or pick one of your favorite incubators, a Mass Challenge, Sans competition, whatever. In Metro West, because we don't have anything like that. So that's always been my goal, but so my background is in marketing. I knew that I needed to do some things to start getting people aware of what we were doing. So it's a little bit different, I think, than some of the other businesses.
With Bow and Drape, a very successful Kickstarter, a lot of very happy fans early on. I'm kind of curious, after your success, is it all roses and you sort of started afterwards? Can you talk a little bit about, now that you've raised all the money, are people very patient and willing to work with you, or are they sometimes chomping at the bit? And what did you learn from that?
So our Kickstarter campaign, our goal was $30,000, and we ended up making $32,000. I think the one challenge we met when we were doing the campaign on Kickstarter was that we had to reach out to our networks a lot more than the network from Kickstarter. I think that was because the audience we were talking to wasn't necessarily a woman, maybe not like a older woman, or I don't know. So we think our customer is shopping at Nordstrom and not necessarily on Kickstarter. But so I think our success was through our own network, and then after the Kickstarter campaign, that helped us really go to market. And now we've seen a lot of success, and we've seen even repeat customers, which is really exciting. And we're launching our spring line, so everything's been pretty rosy.
With those early customers, did any of them have high or different expectations, and that you kind of had to adjust, or did you feel like everybody kind of knew what they were getting into and was happy with what they got?
I think we haven't had any returns yet, so that's a positive and hard to say. So I think people were excited. I think the one thing from a branding perspective is that we're calling ourselves Bespoke Women's Wear, and Bespoke is also known to be tailored to your actual measurements, which isn't what we're doing. We still have standard sizing, so that's kind of a branding messaging.
Is there anything you think that happened during the Kickstarter, or the way the Kickstarter was presented, that you think made it very successful, as opposed to a lot of times? I've seen a lot of Kickstarters where people are like, oh, we got this a year late, or it came in black, and I was expecting it in orangutan, or yeah.
We honestly, not that I know of, some of our Kickstarter funders haven't designed their own garments yet, so I think maybe they're waiting for new products to come out, but I'm not sure.
But happy customers?
Yeah.
Cool. Halley.
Don't ask me about an orangutan. Okay. Sounds like Life of Pi.
With the book, I mean, do you think people how did you sort of sell that you were going to be able to do this and sort of deliver a book that people are going to enjoy? Did you find anything, just personal connections, writing samples? How do you sort of sell something on something that's so personal and artistic, when they're just kind of trying to believe in you?
I had good company by sitting in theaters and watching people see the Facebook movie and actually be willing to listen to people arguing about dilution and all these things that are so startup-y. And people who know nothing about startups are like loving that movie. So I'm thinking, maybe I could talk about some of these things. And so a big part of the buy-in, too, like movies, I gave as a choice. You could spend a certain amount of money and you'd be a character in my book. So that's why I don't want to talk about orangutans. I have a few very well-known entrepreneurs that are going to be in the book. I had to kind of ask permission. There's a lot of sex in the book. Do they want to have sex with other characters or not? Or it's got some very strange problems, my book. And I had a whole set of people, including, you think it's funny, you try. I have a number of startups that bought into the book, like product placement, like a can of Coke in a movie. And so I have a number of just like trials, in terms of editorial to get everybody in. That's a little tricky, but that's exactly what crowdfunding is. You want people in. You want people to think, that's my book. I want that book. Or it talks about things that I care about. And that is, I think, the most powerful thing about crowdfunding. I want people to look at my page. I explained, as you asked me, how do they know it would be? I didn't even know if it'll be done, but I have written books before. I've been published before. I've been published in the same month I was published in Penthouse Magazine and Harvard Business Review. And I think I'm inventing a genre that is like business sex. I don't know. But that's the kind of stuff I'm writing about. You know what happens in offices. It's not all work. So anyway, it's demonstrated in my video what I've written before. What else? I just wanted everybody to feel like you could do this too. I had just come off a startup that was about get out there, learn about e-publishing, write your book, and publish your book. We want to hear from you. There's so many people who have been not able to be in the publishing world that now can be in. And so I wanted to do it just for that reason, too, to show people, listen, I can do it, you can do it, it's not such a big deal. So does that answer some of your questions?
You think she answered the question? Now, again, we kind of quickly surveyed the crowd, and a lot of people are about to embark or have already embarked on sort of their own crowdfunding campaign. What's one thing that if you could go back to pre-crowdfunding, back when you were naive and innocent and happier and less stressed, that you could tell that person to be more successful or maybe to avoid something that you wish you'd known or just done something slightly differently?
That's a great question. I wish somebody answered that before I started it. So, two quick things. One is it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. I would say I was putting in 40 hours a week just to doing the crowdfunding stuff. Putting together lists, updating lists, changing the messages, managing the thing, blah, 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 blah. It takes a lot of time. And some of that was the upfront work to actually, write all of the information that you end up putting on the crowdfunding platform. So that's the first thing, and I'm sure these ladies will agree with that. The second, by the way, it's one of the biggest mistakes. If you go out to a number of the platforms, especially the ones that have lower entry bars, if you will, there are thousands of projects out there that have raised zero, because the mistake is that people thought that if they put it out there that they would just automatically raise money, that people were trolling for their things. There are people that are wealthy that will go look for certain projects, but it's so few and far between. It's not something you can rely on. You have to do the marketing. But I think that the biggest mistake that I made, and as a marketing person, I should slap myself across the head. It took me a few weeks of feedback when somebody that I know who's fairly well off, he makes pretty good money at a very large company. I only know him as a business colleague, but he actually emailed me back saying, sounds like a great project, and I've got 2 kids in college, I can't send you any money. And that happened a few times. And I started thinking about that, going, really? I mean, I'm looking for like $25, $50, really? And I started thinking about it, because whenever something happens that's kind of a little bit of an outlier, you should think about it. And I called him back and I said, I really am not asking you for money for this. Can I ask you a question about your answer? Really, I swear to God I'm not asking you for the money, but I just want to understand, why did you tell me that because you have kids in school you can't do this? I mean, I know it would have been fine, but it sounded like there's something behind it. And he said, well, I don't have $10,000 to give you with kids in school. And I'm like, oh. So people don't know what the word crowdfunding really means, and I didn't take the time to educate people on that. So I'm thinking I probably missed several opportunities where people also thought I was look at 10,000 would have been nice. Not that I would ever turn that away. But 20 or 50 were really quite acceptable, and so that was a really good learning for me. So if you can learn from that.
So I wasn't part of Bow and Drape when we did the Kickstarter program, but I think if Aubrey were here, she would tell you that definitely know who your audience is and if your audience is on one of these platforms, because I think for us, we reached out, like I said, we reached out to a lot of our networks, and then, as you were saying, you become a partner with Amazon, and they take a chunk of the change. And so I guess just definitely know who your audience is. And then I had another thing that I was going to say. Oh, and reach out to your advisors as soon as possible. Like if you know someone and you're trying to start a company and you're reluctant to ask questions, just the sooner you can talk to people that can advise you, the better.
I have 3 things, and the one I'll say the worst first, which is as a writer, on your Kickstarter page you have a big video and lots of words. Nobody reads your words. Everybody looks at your video. So make sure your video is good, and that's just, hard for me to deal with, but it's like get rid of your words. If you say it in your video, you don't need very many words. So that would be number 1. Number 2, I learned from a lot of people, and they told me this, and I totally disregarded it. Start with a very low amount of money. Another friend that we've done at the other Kickstarter created a pen, and he asked for $1,000 was his goal. He got the 1,000 in a day or 2, and then everybody loves a winner. What is he? Fully funded. He's this guy. He's great. Look, this is, and so he gets all this, heat because he's hit his number early on. Also, little does anybody know except us, because he got his number, he can relax and keep fundraising for about a month. Most people do about a month on Kickstarter. And the third thing, we talked about this earlier. I've been in sales. You just can't even believe how many times you have to ask people. And you think, oh my God, they're going to be like really annoyed with me because I have some really amazing funders, and I'm like asking Craig from Craigslist, come on, Craig, come on, it's mine. Like, you're not giving me money. So I had to ask him like 5 or 6 times. And he's like, okay. So you don't be shy about asking and asking and asking. And you just can't even believe it. And even people are like, great, I'm so glad you're doing this. I can't wait to invest. And like, okay, so you haven't invested. So what are you waiting for? You keep thinking, just don't be daunted. You have to absolutely keep asking endlessly. So if it's hard work, it's hard, but it's persistent. And just don't be thrown off. And also, every little dollar that people give, they may know 5 or 10 or 20 other people that are going to invest with them. So I really got around the same thing. People think they've got to give a lot. You're like, no, you don't. Please don't. Give $1 and give me 10 more people that could give me money. You're going to do better that way, I think.
So any problems in the audience? Anybody working on a crowdfunding campaign and kind of stumped on any question that they would like to ask our esteemed panel?
How much of your success was your volume of your network? Let's say you don't have a huge network. What is plan B to get
question was about sort of how much of it was sort of the volume of the asking and sort of
Well, the volume of your reach. If you don't have if you don't have a network from coast to coast, you still need to get someone who they have a connection to you, but you just don't have that reach or that database already in your back pocket you have. What do you do next?
So that's a really good question. I mean, the short answer is if you don't have a large network, it's probably not going to work for you, unless you're curing cancer, okay? So you'll find some people. But there are ways of growing your network before you start this, right? So what I would do is go onto the network you do have, tell them what you're going to do. By the way, use that as an opportunity to explain what crowdfunding is, right? Didn't do that. And tell them you're going to be asking them for just, if I did this again, I would say, even though I've got 1,000 people, you all know me, if you each would give me $5 and tell 1 other people, that would be the nicest thing you could ever do for me. That's the sort of thing to do. But do that before you even launch the platform because, as Halley was saying, I think some of them even limit the number of days you can be live on the platform, but 30 to 45 is considered the best practice average. So you don't want to be using up those cycles building the network. Do that before you even launch the campaign.
I want to disagree a little bit. If you have been alive on this earth more than 18 years, you have a network. So I just don't believe that you don't have people that you might pick up your kids at school. There's a mom network. There might be, a church network, a temple network. There's a lot of people in your life. So I don't think you can think, if I hit my $1,000 goal in the first 3 days, everybody's going to go away? They don't. More people around. Another big network is everybody else's network. I invested in many Kickstarter programs that I asked the people who were doing those programs, can you talk about my program? Can you, help me? So they have networks. I went through all the different Kickstarter people that needed money, and I gave them all a little money, and I talked to them and got experience, and a number of them sent to their hundreds of people information about my project. So that was the network I didn't expect to have, and I used. So I just feel like there's a million ways to do things. And when you think you're at the end of your rope of coming up with stuff, ask other people. They have great things, too. And it's like a party. When you have people all in, more people want to be there. So I think you can really, you have alumni networks. You got Facebook. You know how many people you know? Come on. How many people do you have on Facebook? You must have at least 200, 500. I'm asking you. I'm asking you. You say you have no network. I bet you have a phenomenal network. Do you have any children? Well, children have a ton of Facebook friends, too. So all of that, make some friends on Facebook. Make them help you. So I think you can't give up. I think that it's there. And every time, and I had many times I thought, I give up. This is ridiculous. This isn't going to happen. I mean, I do have a little surprise thing that happened, which is very towards the end when it looked like it wasn't going to come together. I got a surprise donor, anonymous donor of $10,000, okay? And that just came out of God knows where the blue. It was actually, I finally kind of tracked it through other people I knew had recommended. And there was all this energy at the end of the project, and I had every reason to think this is not going to happen. It happened. So.
Does anybody in the room have any experience with B2B software? So ultimately, I want my customers to use the software, not just buy it because they like me, right? So almost like buying a share, they get something for it. Does anybody have any advice for getting investors who ultimately become customers, but they're private citizens now, but ultimately their companies will be paying the bill for the software that they buy? So I'm curious if anybody's...
So are you... The tricky thing is the legal issues around offering equity. So with B2B, you're really trying to tell a different story, and you're trying to offer. So the question about B2B is really one about what's the story, what's the value, and you're really trying to say what's the value that they get from this exchange. So if your rewards are, let's say, $500 or $5,000, then you need to be sort of offering credit or something equal to that in whatever your
when their company buys, they get
right.
credit.
So it's sort of instead of getting a book or a piece of fashion or a service, you're trying to offer that business value way beyond the money that they put in.
Right. So, for example, a sales manager would pay out of their own pocket to put money into my campaign, but ultimately their company is going to potentially issue a purchase order sometime down the road for the software. So that's the dilemma I'm trying to solve. It's two different people kind of giving money at two different times.
Or it could be the business. If it's, if they see it as something potential to their business and you get enough of them in the room, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, I think that brings up another great point in terms of sort of catering your rewards to your audience. I mean, right now, so Kickstarter, you get a gift or a prize or reward, as they call it, and a lot of Indiegogo does the same thing. And there's a few that are now about to start now with the Crowdfunding Act passed, offer actual equity. I guess my first question is, if you could offer equity in your projects now, would that be something you would have done? And second, either way, how do you craft rewards that get people to give and that get people excited? Do you think it has to be product specific, like with Bow and Drape, of sort of early access to that? Or can it be something that's kind of related, or maybe just stickers that somebody was talking about earlier?
I think it goes back to what I said before, which is a lot of people will crowdfund you because they care about you. My lowest hanging reward was a hug. I think that Jim actually, I owe you one, don't I, Jim? I think he said that you sent me back an email saying you were scared of not getting a hug, so you had to crowdfund me, right? So there's a few people who crowdfunded me in here. It's not really about the reward, in my opinion, though I did love what Bow and Drape did, and I did get my reward in the mail, and I thought that was really very clever. But I don't think that that's necessarily what it's about. I did have high-level rewards for high-level donors, and I did have several $1,000 people, and they actually got some of my consulting time because I think that had a little value for them. And the rest of the people pretty much get tickets to the catalyzing party that we will have very soon, and that's part of the reward. Just from the equity perspective, I love the whole crowdfunding and the equity thing. However, I'm a not-for-profit, so it's really not applicable to me directly.
I don't know if I can answer the equity question, but I'm in charge of the marketing for Bow and Drape, and having these rewards were great because it's such a new concept, and when you're shopping, you don't know the value of customizing a dress until you actually go through the entire experience. So if you funded us on Kickstarter, you got a code to go onto our website and go through the entire experience. So we have great brand advocates now through that.
In terms of the equity idea, with a book, there's been an equity program called Big Six Publishing where they steal 70% of the money and you get 30%. They get all the work. So that has not gone over real well, and that's why Amazon started doing ebooks where the reverse is the case. You get 70% of the profits yourself, and they keep 30%. So this is the root of what's shaking up publishing. Would I want to maybe give people part of the book royalties? Not in this case, I just didn't. But it's an interesting thing to think about. What would they get for that? I don't know. Maybe I was just playing with the idea of would they like to be in it, this book. So after that, I don't know. I think it's an interesting idea.
Great. Do we have time for a quick wrap-up, or we're getting the signal?
Maybe like a couple more questions.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me. Are you going through Amazon for your book when you print it?
Yeah. I like Amazon.
We got another audience question?
What is the really added value that you pay for then when you give back equity to the Kickstarter or Indiegogo? What is really the value that you get?
So if these platforms aren't necessarily giving you a network, why do this as opposed to just slapping like a PayPal button up on your site or doing it yourself?
Right. Since you leverage your own network anyway, basically, other than you have post-market benefit like with your dresses, because you get your customers. But I think you're more an outlier in that case.
That's a really good question. I think the reason I did it was because the platform is cohesive. so that the message is there and the video is there, and you get to see who is funding you, and they get points and they post things and you see how many of each reward. So I think that sort of contesty kind of thing is kind of fun, and watching how many days you have left. Most of them have meters, right, and how much money you've raised and all that sort of thing is kind of, it's kind of fun. That probably wouldn't work in a situation where there's actually equity, remember. So, these types of crowdfundings are barter systems, right? And by the way, we haven't talked about taxes and things, which is one of the things that I'm working on trying to figure out on all of this. But it is a bartering system. You're getting money for giving people something, whether it's samples of material or a hug, but, you're bartering things. The equity thing is totally different because you're giving people part ownership in your company, really.
I guess another positive benefit to being on Kickstarter, we got amazing press from it. So that's always a plus.
It gives you that legitimacy. It gives you a sense that, it's a real project. And their software is beautiful. It's beautifully designed, and it's simple, and it's really easy to use. And I could get in touch with the network of people that did fund me, but are they going to read that email compared to, it's kind of, you really get hooked on investing in projects when you start to get into Kickstarter. I noticed around Christmas, all these people are like, they're like buying I don't know what they were doing, but they're spending their Christmas money on Kickstarter. I'm like, wow, I wish I waited till Christmas. I did mine in September. But it's a fun thing to know you're helping somebody make their dream project come true. So it gives you access to people who believe that and believe in other creative projects, and you need that. As a writer, I really need that. There are days I don't want to sit and write, and I'll look, and I'm like, I've got all these people waiting for this book. Okay, I'll do it. It really helps me. So it's a community as well as a platform, as well as a branding opportunity, and it gives you legitimacy, I think, and it's fun. I think it's very fun.
One of the challenges on setting the reward is I'm responding to what you're saying, where it is really about people who know and they believe in you and support you. One of the things as I'm building my campaign is figuring out the reward levels and how much do you even need to give away, because at the end of the day, the idea is to raise funds. And if you're giving away, percentage to Amazon or percentage here, percentage there, and the products that you're providing, they're going very similar situation. What's your takeaway at the end? And I love the press and I love all of that, but I'm struggling with how much do you really need to offer out to the people to entice them to. Can you repeat the question?
So the question was about setting reward levels. I mean, already the Kickstarter, whatever platform you're using, is taking a cut. And then if you give somebody a $50 reward for $50, you're actually going to lose, $4. So how do you set those rewards so you gain money and make some, actually raise funds using crowdfunding while also enticing people to give? Is that a fair?
Okay, so obviously I have a service, so it's kind of, hard to have something that I would give associated with the service, which was why I figured I'd give some of my services to higher level donors of a hug or the tickets to the event. But I'll give you some better examples. So I teach entrepreneurship at college. One of the first companies that I crowdfunded was 3 years ago on Kickstarter, kind of when it was a new thing. And they were doing what was very common back then. A lot of these crowdfunding platforms came out of the creative industry, right? People doing movies, records, that sort of thing. So these students of mine were trying to do a pilot movie, and they came up with some very clever things. I think if you have the right product, these guys, by the way, did amazing, clever things. But these students had different levels, and I think I crowdfunded them. I think they did $10, $25, like $50 levels. I think I did $25. For the $25 level, they would have one of their star actors do a little 30-second video thanking you by name that they would then post on your Facebook page. And it was cool having this guy that's this character in this pilot that, by the way, hasn't gotten picked up, darn. But saying, thanks, Barbara, you're really cool, man, way to go. And it got stuck up on my Facebook page. It was cool. For higher level things, there would be things like Halley was doing with, characters or a walk-on spot or things like that. So depending on what you have creativity that's possible. I couldn't get that creative. I just wasn't really finding things. But I also knew that I didn't want to stress over it because it's not really what people were going for.
I guess for us, I wasn't there when we did the strategy behind the tiers of the prizes, but we did have tiers, and I guess the lowest amount that, say, someone donated $20, then they would get nail polish or a little ring or something that was low cost to us. And then as you got higher up, it's just a matter of strategizing how much it costs to make a scarf, and then how much you're going to have someone give you, and then go from there.
That's right, because it's a business, and if you don't know what your costs are, you've got a problem. So you better know. But I found that a lot of the things I made up that people wanted that were like cheap or no cost to me, everybody wanted those. And then I threw in just the mix. I threw in a level where you could get that magic 8-ball, which is such a stupid thing, right? But people are crazy for that thing. I got all these people want the magic 8-ball. I'm like, oh, great, okay. Because one of my characters is a venture capitalist. He makes decisions based on the magic 8-ball. He pretends he's like actually reading, the business plan, but he's like, oh, it looks like, indeed you should. So everybody wanted the magic 8-ball. So then I had to and luckily Amazon sells them. I could send them right out. So, but I don't know what they're doing with their magic 8-balls. But I hope they're not investing with them.
They may be better off. Great. Over there? Yep.
Just as venture capital isn't for everybody, it sounds as if this is a very versatile way for lots of different types of people to raise money. How would you characterize the people that shouldn't even go here, so you don't even waste your time?
It's a great question. The question was, who shouldn't be raising money using crowdfunding? I mean, what if some people are sort of getting all this ready, they're about to send out that email blast saying, hey, chip in $25 or start the Kickstarter. What do you think that it sort of disqualifies you or your project? Not all projects are made for crowdfunding.
I'll bump the question up a little bit just to make one point. I actually looked at Kickstarter for my crowdfunding, and I didn't qualify for Kickstarter. So they all have their own criterion, and mine wasn't project enough oriented. It was worth going through. By the way, because I teach, some of this stuff is interesting for me, because then I learn about all this stuff. But to answer the question more in general, I guess it goes back to what I said before. You don't just put something out there hoping people are going to throw money at you. You have to work this. So I guess don't do it unless you're really serious about working the platform and, then working your whatever it is you're delivering. I mean, I'm sure there is some level of fraud, and I actually asked the folks on Rocket Hub, what happens if, I have this catalyzing party as a reward, and, what happens if I fall flat on my face and don't have it? And they said nobody's ever come back to them and complained about that, because, again, it's not really about the reward, it's about doing it. And, again, my intention is to do the party, but I was kind of what happens? So, but if you're really not serious about it and you're just going to, post some stuff up, don't waste the airspace.
I agree with you.
You know me, I'm very optimistic, and I think everybody should do it. So, but I will add one caveat, which is the book is called Founder's Lesson 3, because they tell you don't have one founder, don't have 3, 2 is good. So if you're a person like my adorable, I love him, mobile programmer husband, who would like to talk to no people in a given 2 weeks, maybe one person. He's not a great Kickstarter guy, but he could have a founder to help him sell a little and be a little markety and be like, yeah, let's do this. So I think it's good to have somebody who can be that way, whether it's you or your partner. Get somebody who's going to be the rah, this is going to be great, I can't wait, it's incredible, hit our number person, to mix in with the reality-based people.
Got time for one quick wrap-up question?
Yes.
Okay, great.
There's a lady over there.
Okay.
Well, so I think my question was answered with the cost and value relationship of what you're giving away as gifts. It sounds like it's 3% cost, and so you're not losing all your money.
that'd be a good one.
From Amazon, from tax, like, where does that go? Do you have to set your goal higher so that you account for that, or I mean, how does that get accounted for? Is my question.
Life and business. So, Dawn is here from one of the accounting firms who could probably, after this, answer some of these questions more realistically. So, every platform has a different business model themselves. So, with Rocket Hub, for instance, you have to give a percentage to them, right? So, with Rocket Hub, it's an all or more model, which is why I shot the moon and went for such a high amount. However, what happens is, if you were to meet or exceed the amount that you set, and it's up to you to set that amount, it would have been, I think, 8%. If you don't meet or exceed it on Rocket Hub, it's 12%. So I gave 12% back to Rocket Hub by doing my little experiment. I wanted to do it, though. So where, as we were mentioning with Kickstarter, it's an all or nothing model. If you don't meet your goal, you don't get the money. However, you're right. So these are some of the things that I kind of knew about, but really wasn't really thinking about totally wholeheartedly. And on Kickstarter, by the way, a percentage does go to the Amazon, and you have to have a merchant account and blah, blah, blah. You don't on Rocket Hub. But there is a tax consequence. This is income, right? So I'm going to have to pay taxes on this money. And I have to figure out the best way. And so I'm working with some of my friends to figure out, the timing and what expenses to take against and all that. But you do, and you have to plan for that. So if your campaign, if you've really done really detailed homework and like these kids that did the pilot, it was going to cost them, I think, $8,000. They had gotten some quotes for some camera equipment and blah, 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 and so they really needed that. They needed to factor in that extra, whatever, 15% maybe, to then be able to cover, the taxes and the fees and all that stuff. For me, the money's going to go to a party and I'll just scale it appropriately, so it's a little more flexible.
Taxes, I love that. It's kind of like between you and not your priest, not your minister, you and your accountant, about the fact that first you pay the fee to Amazon or to whomever, and then, like any small business, if you have expenses against what your project is, that's the basic rule. An important rule, I think, for me, unless my accountant's lying, is that I did it all in the calendar year that ended this past year. The expenses, the money came in and the money went out in terms of expense all in 1 year. So if you're thinking about bridging a year, you better think about that carefully.
Since we don't want to end on a down topic like taxes, 30 seconds, real quick. What is somebody who is in the middle of a crowdfunding campaign, they've sent out their first round of emails, they're off to an okay start. What's one quick thing that they can do, or one thing that they can do tomorrow when they wake up after they've had their third cup of coffee that can push things a little more in the right direction?
I'm deferring.
There are many things. In fact, here's what I did. I went trawling. I was looking all the time in Kickstarter for people who had 5 days left and they hadn't hit their number. I invested in them. I asked them how could I help them. It's give to get. I said, can I send out an email to my 600 supporters talking about your project? I tried to help all of them finish their project when I was in the middle of mine, and I didn't know what was going to happen with mine. Many of them came back and helped me at the end of mine. So if you don't think you're going to be spending a lot of time with your fellow Kickstarters, you're crazy. Help those people hit their number. One in particular was a guy making a movie about startups, so we had a lot in common to talk about. And he was in a terrible situation, and I emailed directly to many of my people that had given me money and said, this is this guy's last weekend, please help him. And he made his number. I don't know how much I helped him, but help these guys, they'll help you. And they really did, in the end, help me.
So when we first launched, we saw a lot of traction, and then it was completely dead for a while. And I know that what we did was we reached out and we were really persistent with our own networks, and then we sent out, remember those awful emails where it's like you can pass it along to 15 other people? That's what we did. And then we also did video updates on our Kickstarter to make people come back to our pages.
Wow, I'm usually really creative, and I'm not coming up with very much. I think some of the platforms actually let you add another level, and maybe toward the end, again, my lowest was, I think, 20. I think I should have had a lower level, 2 or 3, because if people won't put in $2 or $3, I think I need to kick them off my LinkedIn. So I think I didn't do that, and I think that could be a possibility depending on the platform you pick.
Well, thank you, everybody, and especially thank our panel. And they'll be available for all your questions that didn't get a chance to get asked tonight. And also, please give a round of applause to all the presenters out there. Thank you so much. And last words.
All right, we've got one last thing. I don't know if everyone knows it. Come here, Jerry. We have a lawyer in the house. Usually okay, right? But these guys have been studying crowdfunding and stuff, and if you haven't gone over to their table, you should and talk to them about it. But I just wanted to ask, as Jeremy said, one or two words.
Sure.
Or one or two words.
Hi. I'm between you and food, I know.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Actually, the food's gone. So.
So my name is Jeremy Halpern. I'm a partner at one of the big law firms here in Boston called Nutter, McClellan & Fish. We have that weird name, Nutter. It's supposed to take seriously. Yeah, nutty fish, Nutter butter. You get all kinds of weird things. I also have the fun of serving on the board of Mass Ventures, which is a venture capital firm here in the Commonwealth that supports Massachusetts businesses. And through that and a variety of activities, I see a ton of plans and a ton of companies in a given year. We've spent a lot of time, my colleague Tom Powers back there, wave Tom. He's the smart, handsome one. We've spent a lot of time trying to help people think about what are some of the ramifications downstream, and particularly not this kind of crowdfunding, but the new kind of crowdfunding that's coming, which is crowdfunding by doing public solicitations for equity, and what the complications are with that, and the goods and the bads, and for whom it will be, it was a great question, for whom it will be appropriate, for whom it's going to be very troublesome. In general, I wish I had better answers for you, but we're a little bit nervous about the equity style of crowdfunding because the follow-on investors who you need, right? You don't need $32,000 to run your business. You probably need $3 million to run your business. You need $32,000 to get started, but you're going to need more later. And if the early money you take from people will inhibit you from being able to raise more money later, that's a bad choice, and you really have to think about whether or not this kind of funding can sustain you over time. By the way, just to be clear, Kickstarter won't annoy angels and venture capital, but crowdfunding by selling equity to 200 people who've never met you will annoy angels and venture capital, private equity, banks. People are very uncertain about what the consequences of this stuff will be. So the right answer for you guys is get educated and stay tuned. We'll know more. Hopefully, Tom, what's your bet on the SEC actually saying something useful? Third quarter. Okay, so you're only 9 months late. But please stay tuned. If you want to know more, I can talk with folks individually. I know I'm between you and getting out. So, but we'll be over at the table. I also just want to put in a quick plug, which is to thank Bobby for hosting me. She does an amazing job. Thanks a lot.
All right, so we're here until 8:30, and then some of us will head over to Firebrand Thinks. You're welcome to join us, and thank you so much for coming. And again, tweeting, hashtag crowdfunding, and help support these companies. Thanks.